Hi everyone, welcome to Romance Stories. Before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. My childhood sweetheart, driven by an obsessive desire to possess me, knocked on my door in the middle of a torrential downpour. Pitying her, I let her stay the night, but she dared to turn my home into a prison. Not only did she bind me to the bed, but she also resorted to threats to force me to stay with her forever. After dragging me into the bedroom, she shoved me violently onto the mattress. Then, she began to frantically tear at her own clothes, her voice a constant, haunting murmur. "Ethan, we have to be together forever. No one can ever pull us apart." I pushed her away as hard as I could. "What are you doing?" Her eyes burned with a sinister fire, as if she intended to swallow me whole. In the days that followed, Mia, the girl I grew up with, became a total stranger. She forbade me from leaving, sealed every window in the house, and confiscated my phone. I tried to seize a moment when she wasn't looking to escape through a window, but she caught me. She lunged at me in a fit of rage, throwing me hard against the floor. "Ethan, why are you doing this to me? Don't you love me?" Her voice choked with emotion, her eyes a chaotic mix of despair and fury. Looking at her, I felt a wave of fear mingled with helplessness. "What you're doing isn't love, Mia. You're destroying both of us." She didn't seem to hear a word I said. She turned and walked into the kitchen, returning with a razor-sharp knife. "Ethan, if you won't stay with me willingly, then we'll just stay here together, forever." She brandished the knife, pointing it directly at me as she closed the distance. My heart hammered against my ribs. Suddenly, she lunged forward, not to strike, but to pull me into a suffocating embrace. "Ethan, even if you hate me, I will never let you go." I felt a crushing sense of hopelessness. I had no idea how to escape this childhood friend who had spiraled into madness. I struggled with every ounce of my strength to break free from Mia's grip. Mia remained oblivious to my resistance, a crazed smile spreading across her face. "Illegal? Ethan, as long as I can be with you, I don't care about anything else." At that moment, my phone, which I had hidden, suddenly began to ring. Mia's gaze instantly turned predatory. She snatched the phone and smashed it against the floor with terrifying force. "No one is allowed to disturb us." I stared in despair at the shattered remains of my phone. The fear in my heart reached its breaking point. I didn't know what to do. Am I really going to be trapped here forever, controlled by a childhood friend who has lost all touch with reality? Suddenly, an idea struck me. I forced myself to appear submissive. "Mia, I know you love me," I said softly. "Actually, I don't want to leave you either. It's just, you're making me a little scared." Hearing this, the tension in Mia's face eased slightly. "Ethan, as long as you're obedient and listen to me, I'll treat you well." Taking advantage of her lowered guard, I edged slowly toward the window, desperately searching for a way to call for help. However, she caught on to my intentions almost instantly. She lunged at me again, dragging me back to a corner of the room. "Ethan, you still want to leave me, don't you?" Her voice was thick with despair and renewed fury. "No, Mia, that's not it," I explained hurriedly. "I just wanted to look at the view outside." But Mia no longer believed a word I said. She produced a length of rope and bound me tightly to a chair. "Just stay right here, Ethan. Don't even think about running away again." Minutes turned into hours. My body grew numb from the tight restraints, and Mia's gaze never left me for even a single second. Just as I was about to abandon all hope, a sudden commotion erupted outside the door. Then came the sound of a heavy thud. Someone was trying to break the door down. Mia stood up in a panic, her eyes filled with terror and rage. "Who is it? Don't you dare try to destroy our world." With a thunderous crash, the door was burst open. A group of police officers stormed in. "Release him," one of them shouted. Mia swung her arms wildly, trying to resist with a crazed strength, but she was quickly overpowered and restrained. I was finally rescued, though my body was so weak I could barely stand. With the support of the officers, I stepped out of that terrifying room. The sunlight hit my face, yet I felt no warmth. I had lived in total darkness and fear for too long. Even now, every time night falls, Mia's manic eyes flash through my mind. However, just when I thought the nightmare was over, I received an anonymous letter one evening. It contained only one sentence. "Ethan, I'll come back for you." My heart plummeted into an abyss. Is she really still not letting me go? Fear enveloped my life once more. I had no idea what would happen next, but only a few days later, I received word that Mia had been released. It turned out she had faked a return to sanity, acting with such profound remorse that she managed to deceive both the doctors and the police. When I heard the news, my heart constricted with dread. Fear became my shadow. As I was walking home alone, a hand suddenly yanked me into a dark alleyway. It was Mia. Her gaze was even more manic and obsessive than before. "Ethan, I told you I'd come back for you. No one can ever tear us apart." She wrapped her arms around me, her grip so powerful I couldn't break free. I tried to persuade her to let me go, but she wouldn't listen. "Ethan, your world can only have room for me. I won't keep you by my side forever." From that moment on, Mia monitored my every move second by second. My life plunged entirely into darkness, haunted by this pathological childhood friend with no way out. Amidst the endless fear and despair, I decided to temporarily play along with her, waiting for the perfect moment to escape her once and for all. She began to relax her guard slightly, no longer tracking my every move as strictly as before. I went shopping with her, watched movies, and did the things couples do, but my soul was filled with torment and unease. One day, Mia said she wanted to take me to a special place, a remote, abandoned factory that looked gloomy and terrifying. "Ethan, this will be our secret base, belonging only to us." She took my hand, a look of twisted satisfaction in her eyes. I fought to suppress my internal terror as I followed her into that dark corner. I didn't know what would happen next. I only knew I had to stay calm and wait for an opening. Deep inside the factory, Mia suddenly stopped, turned around, and pulled me into a suffocating embrace. "Ethan, no one could disturb us here." Her voice echoed through the vast, empty warehouse, sounding utterly chilling. I forced a strained smile and nodded in response. "You're right, Mia." At that moment, she pulled a key from her pocket and unlocked a small room nearby. The room was filled with bizarre items, photos of me, things I had used, and even tools that looked like they were designed for restraint. My heart sank. The sense of unease was more overwhelming than ever. Mia pulled me down onto a weather chair and began detailing her delusional plans for our future. "Ethan, we'll live here from now on, never to be parted. I'll cook delicious meals for you every day, and we'll do whatever you want to do." I nodded along as I listened, but my mind was racing, calculating an escape route. A few days later, Mia seemed to have completely lowered her guard, convinced by my submissive act. Once, when she went out to find food, I discovered she had forgotten to lock the door. This was the opportunity one had been waiting for. Without a second of hesitation, I bolted out the door. But I had only covered short distance when I heard Mia's furious voice echoing from behind. "Ethan, you dare lie to me." My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran as fast as my legs would carry me, not daring to look back. Ignoring everything else, I lunged through narrow paths choked with wild weeds. As Mia's screams grew fainter, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. Finally, I broke out of the desolate wasteland and reached a main road. By a stroke of luck, a taxi happened to be passing by, and I frantically waved it down. "Driver, please, just go. Fast." The driver saw my panicked face and, without asking questions, slammed on the gas. I slumped in the seat, gasping for air, my heart still racing uncontrollably. I glanced back to confirm that Mia wasn't following, and only then did I feel a slight sense of relief. Upon returning to the city, I found a small motel to stay in. I didn't dare go home, and I didn't dare contact anyone, terrified that Mia would track me down again. In that cramped room, I curled up in a corner, my mind haunted by the image of her manic eyes. I didn't know when this nightmare would truly end. For several days, I remained holed up in that motel, afraid to step outside. Every day passed in a blur of anxiety and dread, expecting Mia to appear out of thin air at any moment. However, as the days went by without a single trace of her, I began to lower my guard and think about what to do next. I knew that hiding forever wasn't an option. I had to rebuild my life. So, I decided to find a job to reintegrate into normal society. After some effort, I landed a simple position at a small company. I tried to bury myself in work, desperate to forget those horrific events. One day, I received a letter. When I opened it, I realized it was from Mia. Ethan, I know I was wrong. I hope you can give me one more chance to start over. Holding the letter, I drifted into deep thought. Memories of the time I had shared with Mia involuntarily flooded back. Those sweet, warm moments caused a slight stir in my heart, even a hint of hesitation. I began to ask myself, could Mia really change? Perhaps everyone deserves one chance to make things right. This internal conflict grew stronger. I even started to imagine what our future could be like if she truly had changed. But whenever I remembered her past insanity, I couldn't help but feel a surge of fear that this was just another elaborate ruse. Ultimately, I decided to give her that one more chance. After I returned home, Mia's behavior was indeed different. She became gentle and attentive, putting my needs before everything else. However, a knot remained in my heart. I couldn't completely cast aside my defenses. One day, after coming home from work, I found that Mia had prepared a lavish spread of food. Ethan, you've been working so hard lately. Come, try what I've made. Just as I was about to sit down and eat, my phone suddenly buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Be careful. She hasn't changed. My heart instantly constricted. I froze, staring at Mia while my mind raced over that message. After dinner, I excused myself to my room, claiming I was exhausted, and began to speculate about who could have sent that warning. While I was lost in thought, Mia knocked and entered. Ethan, I've run the hot water for you. Why don't you take a relaxing bath? I looked at her, my unease growing deeper, but I managed to keep my composure and gave her a small smile. Thanks. You should get some rest early, too. Mia nodded and turned to leave the room. Over the next few days, I pretended everything was normal on the outside, but internally, I was scrutinizing Mia's every move. Every day, she carefully prepared meals, cleaned the house, and took care of me with extreme devotion. Yet, I always felt that beneath this tranquil exterior, something sinister was hidden. One day, I returned from work early and found that Mia wasn't home. A wave of suspicion surged within me. Where could she be? Just as I was about to go out and look for her, I heard her footsteps outside. I rushed back to the sofa and sat down, pretending to watch TV. Mia walked in looking somewhat flustered, but she quickly regained her composure. Why are you home so early today? She asked. The office didn't have much going on, I replied. The days continued to pass in a state of superficial peace, but I never stopped observing her. One day, while Mia was out, I decided to secretly tail her. I watched her wander around before she finally stopped in front of a villa on the outskirts of town. My heart suddenly sank. My intuition told me something was very wrong here. I cautiously approached the villa and peeked through a rear window. Inside, I saw Mia arguing heatedly with a strange man. What? Mia's voice was filled with rage and fear. I've done everything you told me to. Why won't you let me go? Oomph. That isn't for you to decide, the stranger laughed coldly. Things aren't as simple as you think. Hearing their conversation, I was utterly shocked. It turned out Mia was hiding so much more from me. Just then, she suddenly turned her head toward the window. My heart leaped into my throat. I spun around and fled. Taking a deep breath, I tried to suppress the panic in my chest and decided to head home first to plan my next move. On the way back, my feet felt like lead. My mind was a tangled mess, constantly replaying the scene I had witnessed at the villa. When I got home, I couldn't sit still. Every time I moved, it felt as if 1,000 needles were pricking my skin. When Mia finally returned, I forced myself to put on a normal face, pretending nothing had happened. But the internal turmoil made my disguise feel as thin as paper, as if the slightest touch would cause it to tear wide open. How was your day? Fine, same as always, I replied flatly. I tried to keep my voice steady, but even I could detect the slight tremor beneath the surface. That night, lying in bed, I felt as if I were under a demonic curse, tossing and turning, unable to find rest. Mia's steady breathing drifted into my ears, but instead of comfort, it felt like a countdown to something dangerous. I didn't know if I could believe her anymore. This person, once so familiar, now felt like a total stranger. I felt like I had fallen into an endless, pitch-black labyrinth with no exit in sight. Until one day, Mia suddenly appeared before me. Her eyes were swollen and red, as if she had been crying for hours. The dark circles around her eyes made her look incredibly gaunt. Ethan, Please, please let me explain. Her voice carried a note of pleading, like a wounded animal. My mind was a mess of conflicting emotions. I hesitated for a long time before finally saying, "Fine, speak." Mia took a deep breath, as if gathering all her courage. "That man, he's my father," she said slowly. "He's wealthy, but he's always been incredibly strict with me. I made some mistakes in the past that sent him into a towering rage. He cut off my financial support and started threatening me. Those crazy things I did before. He was the one who forced me to do them." My eyes widened in shock. I had never expected this to be the reason. "Then why didn't you tell me sooner?" I couldn't help but ask, my voice a mix of surprise and lingering resentment. Mia lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper. "I was afraid you'd look down on me, that you'd think I was just someone who could only depend on her family." Looking at her pathetic state, my heart softened. "Fine, I'll forgive you this time. But from now on, you mustn't hide anything from me again," I said helplessly. A spark of joy flashed in Mia's eyes, like a beam of light in the darkness, and she nodded frantically. "I promise I won't." From then on, Mia truly seemed like a different person. She was no longer stubborn or erratic. Our lives gradually returned to a state of peace, as if the previous turmoil had been nothing but a nightmare. However, happiness is often fleeting. One day, I happened to run into the man she called her father on the street. His gaze was predatory, like a vicious wolf staring me down. He spoke in a harsh, grating tone. "You, stay away from my daughter. Nothing good will come from her being with you." I froze, 1,000 questions racing through my mind. Was there something I still didn't know about this? "What do you mean?" Mia already explained everything to me. I furrowed my brows, my face etched with suspicion. Her father let out a cold, contemptuous laugh. "Explained? She's just playing the victim to deceive you. She hasn't changed one bit." My heart skipped a beat, and instinctively, I didn't want to believe him. "That's impossible. I've seen the change in her with my own eyes. That's just the performance she's putting on for you. She only made up with you so she could squeeze more money out of me." His words were like a jagged blade thrust into my heart, causing a sharp, stinging pain. I returned home in a daze to find Mia cooking in the kitchen. A happy smile graced her face, as if nothing in the world were wrong. But now, that smile felt utterly artificial. My mind was a chaotic mess, torn between her affection and her father's warning. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mia's father. "Son, run. Get out now." The moment I saw those words, a chill surged up my spine, as if an invisible hand were tightening around my throat. I looked up at Mia. She was carrying the dishes, walking toward me with a light, graceful step. Her gaze was filled with tenderness. "Dinner's ready. Come and try it," she said, her voice laced with cheer. I fought to stay calm, forced a smile, and sat down to eat. But my mind was stuck on that message. I couldn't taste a thing. Every bite felt like a heavy stone, nearly impossible to swallow. After dinner, Mia went to wash the dishes. Suddenly, she let out a cold laugh, a sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Stop pretending, Ethan. Don't you already know my true face?" I stood up, my legs trembling, my voice shaking just as much. "Mia, don't do anything reckless." She stepped toward me, one slow pace at a time, but she wasn't listening. "Ethan, I've sacrificed so much for you, yet you still want to abandon me." As she spoke, she reached out, grabbed a vase, and smashed it against the floor. The sound of shattering glass pierced through the silent room. "Mia, calm down," I screamed, trying to reach whatever reason she had left. But she seemed to have completely lost control. Without a second thought, I turned and bolted for the door. Mia's voice followed me in a piercing shriek. Then came the frantic thud of her footsteps, right on my heels. My heart hammered violently against my ribs, as if it were about to burst. Every step I took was fueled by raw terror and despair. I reached the main road and ran like a madman, glancing back constantly, terrified she would catch me. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt right in front of me. The sound of the brakes was deafening, and the driver leaned out, shouting curses at me. I didn't have time to apologize. Like a wounded bird, I just kept flying forward. I don't know how long I ran, but I was soon gasping for breath, my lungs burning. Finally, I ducked into a dark alley, leaning against the cold stone wall to catch my breath. At that moment, my heart was drowning in fear and despair. I had no idea where to go next. After a brief moment of frantic thought, I decided I needed a place to hide. I moved cautiously through the alley, my eyes scanning the shadows for any corner where I could disappear. Eventually, I spotted the door of an abandoned warehouse, left slightly ajar as if inviting me in. I nudged it open, and the sharp scent of mold and rot immediately hit me. The interior was choked with the smell of decay. I found a corner piled high, with junk, and crouched down, trying to stay hidden like a wounded animal shivering in the darkness. My heart was pounding out of rhythm, and I strained my ears to catch any sound from the outside world. Every tiny noise set my nerves on edge, making me feel as if Mia would burst through the door at any second. Minutes ticked by like hours, but she didn't appear. My frayed nerves relaxed slightly, and I began to weigh my options. I pulled out my phone only to see the battery was nearly dead. I hesitated. Should I call for help? What if she was tracking the signal? Just as I was debating this, I heard footsteps outside the warehouse. In the dead silence of the alley, the sound was unmistakable. My heart leaped into my throat. The footsteps grew closer, and my breath hitched. In a moment of pure panic, I scrambled inside an old, discarded iron locker. The locker was filled with the pungent smell of rust, and the space was so cramped it felt suffocating. I curled into a ball, not daring to breathe, feeling like prey trapped in a cage. Mia entered the warehouse, her footsteps echoing through the hollow space. Each step felt like it was treading directly on my chest, terrifying me to the point of losing my soul. "Ethan, I know you're in here. Stop hiding." Her voice rang out, carrying a dark, shadowy undertone, like a ghost calling from the depths of hell. I covered my mouth, struggling to control my breathing, terrified of making even the slightest sound. Suddenly, Mia stopped right in front of the locker. My heart rate accelerated to its absolute limit. In that instant, she slowly pulled the locker door open, and our eyes met. A look of manic excitement flashed in her gaze, as if she had finally found her most precious prize. The corners of her mouth curled upward into a grotesque, eerie smile. "Ha, Ethan, I found you." Her laughter echoed throughout the warehouse, sending chills down my spine. I closed my eyes in total despair, thinking to myself, it's over. Fear swallowed me like a rising tide. Mia violently yanked me out of the locker. She threw her arms around me, pinning me with such force that I could barely breathe, as if she intended to crush me into her own body. "Don't you ever dream of leaving me again. Not now, not ever." I couldn't take it anymore. Driven by a raw survival instinct, I fought back with everything I had. "Mia, let me go." I struggled with all my might to break free from her suffocating grip. My resistance sent her into a blind rage. Her expression grew even more twisted and feral, like a wild animal gone mad. "You dare defy me?" She raised her hand to slap me, but I managed to duck and took the opening to shove her back with all my strength. Mia stumbled, nearly crashing to the floor. "Ethan, you've disappointed me so much." She lunged at me again, her eyes burning with a volatile mix of fury and resentment. Taking advantage of her loss of balance, I spun around and bolted toward the warehouse exit. Mia shrieked manically behind me, but this time I didn't look back. Only one thought pulsed in my mind. I had to get away from her at any cost. I burst out of the warehouse and ran like the wind, weaving through a labyrinth of narrow alleys. I don't know how long I ran, but once I was certain she hadn't caught up, I stopped, gasping for air. I was a wreck. My hair was a mess, and my clothes were torn and tattered from the struggle. I had gained a temporary moment of freedom, but it felt heavy with exhaustion and misery. Before I could even catch my breath, the air around me grew stifling again. I turned my head, and there she was, Mia. Somehow, she had appeared at a street corner not far away. Her eyes were like those of a vicious wolf in the dark, gleaming with a predatory light as she stared me down. "Ethan, did you really think you could escape me?" Her voice carried an infinite bitterness and malice, as if echoing from the depths of hell. Terrified, I started running again, eyes darting everywhere in search of a place to hide. Every shadow felt like a potential lifeline, yet each one also hid an unknown danger. Mia was right on my heels, her footsteps like a rhythmic drumbeat of doom pounding against my heart, making it impossible to stop even for a second. Suddenly, I saw a derelict building up ahead, a flicker of hope in the gloom. Without a second thought, I plunged inside. The interior reeked of decay. The walls were draped in cobwebs, and the dim, flickering light was enough to make anyone's skin crawl. Mia followed me in, calling my name. Her voice echoed through the corridors, manic, obsessed, as she began searching the rooms one by one, leaving no corner unturned. I huddled in a dark alcove, not daring to breathe. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought they might crack. I could hear her footsteps echoing in the hallway, each step getting louder, closer, as the terror intensified. Then, Mia's voice rang out through the hall. "Ethan, I can smell you. You won't escape." Her voice rasped like tentacles reaching out from the shadows, tightening their grip around me. My heart sank to the abyss. Cold sweat poured down my face, and my back was drenched. I forced myself to stay calm, my mind racing to find a way out. Suddenly, I spotted an old rope and a tattered burlap sack lying nearby. I struck upon a plan. I tied the rope to the sack and tossed it out of an upper-floor window. The sound of the sack hitting the ground thudded clearly through the silent building. Hearing the commotion, Mia sprinted toward the sound, her footsteps fading into the distance. Seizing the chance, I slipped away in the opposite direction. I moved like a ghost, carefully avoiding any debris that might betray my position as I searched for an exit. Finally, I found a concealed fire escape. The moment I stepped out of the building, I heard Mia's furious roar from inside. Her voice was thick with resentment and unwilling defiance. I didn't dare pause. I ran headlong until I reached a crowded marketplace. The market was swarming with people, a chaotic sea of movement, yet I felt utterly estranged, as if I were a ghost wandering another world. Just as I was gasping for air, still reeling from the shock, a girl with a delicate face stepped toward me. It was Joy. "You look like you've just been through something horrific," she said softly. Her voice was gentle and melodic, injecting a sliver of warmth into my fractured world. I didn't have time to answer. I just scanned my surroundings warily, terrified that Mia was closing in. My eyes searched the crowd for her silhouette. Every similar back made my pulse spike. Joy seemed to sense my overwhelming anxiety. "Don't worry. Follow me for now," she urged, her tone comforting, like a warm hand reaching out to steady my heart. I hesitated for a moment, but seeing the sincerity in her eyes, I eventually followed her. Joy led me to a relatively quiet corner. "What on earth happened?" she asked, her eyes full of curiosity and concern. I recounted the events briefly, my voice heavy with exhaustion and helplessness. With every word, those traumatic experiences replayed in my mind like a horror film. Joy knit her brows, her eyes flashing with shock. "That's terrifying. You should hide at my place for a while." At that exact moment, Mia's figure appeared at the entrance of the market. Her gaze was like a blade, slicing through the crowd as she hunted for her prize. It made my blood run cold, like being tracked by a venomous serpent. Her eyes swept across the stalls and finally locked onto the corner where Joy and I were standing. Her face instantly contorted into a twisted, ecstatic grin, a smile that made me shudder uncontrollably. Joy noticed my reaction and followed my gaze, spotting Mia as well. Before Joy could even react, Mia was charging toward us with a predatory intensity. "Ethan, I finally found you." I instinctively shielded Joy, watching Mia with a wary eye. Seeing this, Mia's face grew even darker. She glared aggressively at Joy and demanded, "Who are you? Why are you with him?" Before I could open my mouth to explain, Joy was a step ahead of me. "Who I am doesn't matter," Joy said. "But who are you? Why are you harassing Ethan like this?" Mia let out a cold laugh. "I'm his girlfriend. I harass him because I love him. I can't live without him. As for you, you'd better stay away from him. Otherwise, I'll make your life a living hell." Mia's eyes were bloodshot, and her voice carried a chilling edge that made my skin crawl. Joy didn't flinch, staring directly back into Mia's eyes. "I won't listen to you. Ethan has the right to choose who he wants to be with. Your actions are only making him despise you more." Incensed by Joy's words, Mia shrieked and lunged at her. "Who do you think you are? How dare you try to steal my man?" I rushed to stand between them, shoving Mia back with all my strength. She stumbled back several paces. Once she regained her footing, She looked at me with utter disbelief, her eyes filled with a volatile mix of grievance and rage. Ethan, you dare to push me because of her? Have you forgotten all our beautiful moments? You said you'd love me forever. Tears streamed down Mia's face, but her expression only grew more feral. It's all your fault. It's all because of this home-wrecking fox. Ethan doesn't want me anymore because of you. I'll kill you. With that, Mia pulled a small, sharp knife from her pocket and charged at Joy. In that heart-stopping moment, I grabbed the arm holding the blade. Mia, snap out of it. I yelled. I used every ounce of strength to wrest the knife from her. Mia struggled frantically, her mouth spewing endless curses. You all have to die. No one can take him away from me. I exerted all my might to pin her arm behind her back, finally jerking the knife away. But Mia was like a rabid animal, kicking and biting me. Ethan, I hate you. Everything I did was because I love you. By now, a crowd had gathered, whispering and pointing. Looking at the nearly catatonic Mia, I felt a wave of helplessness and fear. I didn't know how to handle someone this far gone, nor how much longer I could hold out. But looking into her eyes, filled with such raw despair and madness, my heart softened just a fraction. Mia, don't be like this. It breaks my heart to see you destroying yourself like this. Hearing my words, Mia suddenly went silent. She looked at me blankly, her tears flowing without end. Ethan, I really can't live without you. Why can't you understand how I feel? She sobbed, her entire body shaking uncontrollably. I let out a long sigh. Mia, love isn't meant to be forced like this. What you're doing isn't love anymore. It's just pain. Mia bit her lip, her eyes flickering with confusion and agony. But I can't control myself. Every time I think about you leaving me, I feel like I'm losing my mind, she murmured. I reached out and gently patted her shoulder. Mia, calm down and think clearly. This kind of love isn't healthy for either of us. But hearing my words, instead of calming down, Mia became even more agitated. She yanked my hand away, her eyes widening. A manic, uncontrollable glint flashed in her gaze. She let out a piercing shriek. Ethan, what do you mean by that? Are you trying to leave me for good? Her voice was so shrill it seemed to tear through the air, echoing in the still space and making me shudder. Her body began to tremble even more violently. She clenched her hands in a fist so tight her nails practically dug into her palms, her knuckles turning bone white. I've done so much for you. How could you treat me like this? If I can't control myself, isn't it because I love you? If I didn't love you, why have I become like this? She wailed piteously while frantically pounding her fists against my chest. Every blow was delivered with her full strength. Ethan, you are mine. You can only be mine. No one is allowed to take you away. Not even you. Mia's gaze turned predatory, reflecting a chilling determination. The surrounding crowd, terrified by her psychotic break, began to scream and scatter, turning the scene into pure chaos. As for me, pinned in her suffocating embrace, I could hardly breathe. My heart was flooded with infinite fear and despair. At that exact moment, a sudden burst of adrenaline surged through me, allowing me to break free from her. Without a second thought, I turned and fled. I ran with everything I had. Mia's crazed screams followed close behind. Ethan, come back here. You won't escape. I didn't dare look back. All I could hear was the whistling wind and the violent thudding of my own heart. I ran without stopping until my lungs felt like they were going to explode, yet I didn't dare slow my pace for even a second. I don't know how long I ran before the world started to go dark. My legs gave out, and I collapsed hard onto the ground. But I knew in my heart, if I stayed down, she would catch me. The consequences would be unthinkable. Forcing myself through the pain, I pushed up with my hands, trying to stand, but my legs felt like lead. Every movement was an agony of sharp stabs, and Mia's screams behind me seemed to be getting closer and closer. Fear shadowed me like a ghost, driving me relentlessly forward. Suddenly, I saw a police car ahead, its lights flashing. It felt like a lifeline. I summoned every remaining ounce of strength to run toward it. As I ran, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Help! Help me!" The officers in the car heard my cries and quickly stepped out, rushing toward me. At that exact moment, Mia caught up. When she saw the police, a flicker of hesitation and fear crossed her face. "Don't move!" one officer barked. Mia halted, but her eyes remained locked on me with predatory intensity. "What's going on here?" the officer asked. Gasping for air, I gave them a brief account of what had happened. The officer looked back and forth between Mia and me. "Let's head to the station and sort this out." Under police escort, I finally escaped Mia's immediate harassment. I thought the nightmare would end at the station, but the situation only grew more complicated. Mia remained highly agitated, adamantly insisting that I was her lover and that she couldn't live without me. To make matters worse, she produced a mountain of evidence of our supposed romance. Photos of us together and several letters I had allegedly written to her. Confused by these materials, the officers began to doubt my story. "Sir, what's the real story here?" "This evidence doesn't look faked," a tall officer asked, knitting his brows. I explained anxiously. "Those photos, she forced me to take them. And the letters, she coerced me into writing those too." However, the officer's eyes remained full of suspicion. Right then, Mia began to wail and cause a massive scene, throwing the entire station into chaos. Her crying made the officers increasingly frustrated, and their gaze toward me grew even more stern. "You say this was all coerced, but do you have any proof?" one officer questioned. I was speechless. Those moments of coercion had left behind no physical evidence at all. Suddenly, Mia stopped crying and looked at me coldly. "Ethan, stop struggling. You were destined to be mine." Her gaze made me shiver involuntarily. Moments later, the station received a phone call. The voice on the other end caused the officer's expressions to turn grave. After hanging up, an officer turned to me and said, "We just got word from the hospital. Mia was previously diagnosed with a severe mental illness, but she stopped her treatment against medical advice." This news hit me like a bolt of lightning, plunging me into total despair. Looking at Mia's manic, obsessed eyes, I knew that if I resisted violently now, it might lead to a much worse outcome. I took a deep breath and, forcing myself to appear submissive, said, "Mia, let's go." A triumphant smile immediately spread across Mia's face. She gripped my hand tightly, as if terrified I might try to vanish again. Under the suspicious gazes of everyone around us, I followed her out of the police station. All along the way, Mia leaned into me, her voice an endless stream of sweet, haunting endearments. Inside, I was paralyzed with dread, wondering what horrific fate awaited me next. As we passed a narrow alleyway cluttered with discarded debris, I saw my chance. Taking advantage of a split second when her focus wavered, I yanked my hand free and bolted deep into the alley. "Ethan, you dare run again?" Mia's furious scream tore through the air behind me. I didn't slow down for an instant, leaping over piles of junk, desperately searching for an exit. Suddenly, my foot caught on a stray wire. I crashed hard into the ground, but the raw will to survive kept me from hesitating. I scrambled up, ignoring the stings of fresh wounds, and kept sprinting. Behind me, the thud of her footsteps and her shrill cries drew closer, my heart leaping into my throat. Just as despair began to take hold, I saw a low wall ahead. Beyond it seemed to be a quiet street. Summoning my last bit of strength, I scaled the wall and leaped over. However, the moment my feet hit the ground, Mia vaulted over right after me, snagging the hem of my shirt. "Ethan, don't you even dream of running anymore." Mia roared, the strength in her hands almost inhuman. I struggled wildly to break her grip, but she held on like a vice, refusing to let go. "Mia, let me go," I screamed. "Never. You are mine, forever mine." Her eyes were a whirlpool of madness and iron resolve. As we grappled, the sudden wail of the police siren cut through the air. Mia's expression shifted instantly. She dragged me into an adjacent abandoned warehouse. The interior was dark, damp, and reeked of a heavy, nauseating stench of decay. Mia clamped her hand over my mouth, stifling any sound I might make. The sirens grew louder, and my heart hammered against my ribs as cold sweat drenched my forehead. Mia stared intensely at the warehouse door, her body trembling slightly. After a while, the sirens faded into the distance. Only then did she relax her grip on my mouth. I gasped for air. "They'll never find us," Mia whispered. Looking at her, filled with a mix of helplessness and terror, I decided to take a desperate gamble. "Honey," I called out softly. Upon hearing this, a look of pure joy washed over Mia's face, and her gaze softened instantly. You're finally willing to call me that." I forced myself to look at her with feigned tenderness. "Honey, we can't keep hiding like this forever. Why don't we find a place where we can truly live a good life together?" Mia looked at me with lingering suspicion. "Do you really mean that?" I nodded frantically. "Of course I do. I've finally realized, from now on, I just want to be with you properly." A blissful smile spread across Mia's face as she finally lowered her guard. Deep down, I knew these were only hollow words meant to pacify her for the moment. While I feigned a shared vision of our future, my eyes remained sharp, scanning every inch of our surroundings for a way out. "Honey, once we get out of here, let's find a quiet little town and live a peaceful life together." Mia leaned into my chest, lost in a daydream of our life as a couple. "I'd like that. As long as I'm with you, I'll go anywhere." The story is complete. The male lead honestly seems pretty stupid, and the ending isn't very clear either. Anyway, just treat it as entertainment, bros.